This is Evan Matthews, co-founder of Macroverse, and this is part 2 of drawing Dave Toronto's Moonbird, Lazerwing. And, got to remember not to say laser beak. I feel like Lazerwing would not like that. So we want to stick to his official name, Lazerwing. Definitely more heroic than Laserbeak as well. I feel like that's what the villains in the Lazerwing universe would call him. So this is part 2. If you missed part 1, we ended with me needing to go find some additional owl wing reference. I have now done that, and here we are, both with the reference that I found as well as a little additional wing anatomy sketched in, and now ready to continue the inking process. I've got a new layer here, going back to my brush that I'm using for inking here, and just going to move this up a little bit and get right back into the wing inking here. So you can see that, I figured out quite a bit more of this. I'm not going to draw in every single feather, but I want to give a suggestion for what a lot of these will be. And again, we'll be doing quite a bit of this in the color work. Some of them will be more defined than others. You can see I'm kind of wrapping them around this shoulder area here as well. Just don't like that. So that it continues to kind of feel like a shoulder at the same time that it's a wing. You can see one of the things I found in this reference is just this kind of bigger mounds of feathers where it kind of has that elbow, it's kind of elbow area. So I'm definitely doing my own kind of interpretation of this to make it work with this pose. But it definitely helps to have that reference to be able to see what the real thing looks like. And that's just, actually a good drawing tip in general, is that, you can get away with a lot of abstracting and, making things that are not based on reality, and, putting your own spin on take on things. But it's great to understand the original thing before you make it your own. One of the things I learned, and I love to kind of share with other artists as they're developing, a lot of people want to kind of figure out, how do I develop my own style? And the thing that I think is was a real unlock for me, just in thinking about that, because I think especially as a young artist, you look at people that you admire and you want to figure out, number one, sometimes you want to figure out how to do their style, which I certainly did, especially when I thought I was going to draw comics. I had a massive Art Adams phase, as many people did. But as you're thinking and finding your own style, the real key to it is not to find a style. I like to use this example in that one of the hardest things to draw is hands. And so when I have taught drawing classes, it's always one of the things I make people draw a lot of is hands. My typical kind of first assignment, you can ask Tiny Universe about this. Typical first assignment is to draw 100 hands. There's just something about this, that being able to draw it in every angle kind of in every pose. Like you learn so much, not just about how to draw a hand, but just anatomy in general, how to look at something and understand it in three-dimensional space. So drawing hands, very hard, very important, very good skill to develop if you are drawing or wanting to learn how to draw. And so that leads into developing your own style in the sense that hands are one of the hardest things to draw. And to do that means that, when you're drawing 100 hands, you can think about, you might have inspirations from the way other people draw hands, but ultimately your style is just the natural interpretation of how you look at something and draw it. And so, the way that I look at this wing and interpret it in the context of this drawing is going to be different than the way that someone else does. And so when, you see my version of that versus someone else's, that becomes my style versus someone else's style. And it really is that simple. It's the way that my brain and my ability and my creativity interprets this same thing. So, when you are really just representing something the way that you see it, the way that your take on it comes out, that's your style. It's also how I think as a writer, you find your voice. You're, filtering reality through your own lens. And by doing that, you find your creative expression of reality, which is your style. And so I think it really is that simple. All right, so you can see now, having had that reference, that wing makes a lot more sense and feels pretty much like a wing. Like we now buy that as a real wing, much more so than maybe we did previously. So I think that, finding good reference and being willing to go and find good reference to understand how something works, just makes a world of difference when you're creating something like this. Feeling pretty good about that. So now I'm going to go back to the body and keep that wing in the foreground separate and go to this kind of back body layer. And we'll just do a little bit in here, like his body's going to be kind of in here. So let's get that wrapped up and then pretty much done with the inks here. And this is an area where I'm going to kind of just be a little more mysterious with what's actually going on with the body. I just want to mostly create the feeling of the shape of it. And then we'll let color and shading do the rest of it. And there's probably feathers in here, but this is an area where, especially because of where it is in the composition, again, we're going to let this be a little less defined. And I just trust myself in knowing what I'm going to do in the finish, that it's all going to work out. So there we go. Just gives us a little dimensionality to that area under there. So laser beak, no, not laser beak. Laser wing inks are done. So I can turn off the pencil layer. And I'm not going to go too much further at this stage, but I want to kind of give that last bit of the inking phase. And then I'll go ahead and do flats, which are the next stage for me. And so this is going to be where I essentially just do flat color underneath the lines to start to delineate the different areas. I'm going to make a new folder for that. call that flats. If you don't know, the way comics are often made, when there's a colorist, well, even if you're doing your own color work, often this will be step 2 after the inks. You hand it to a colorist, or you're doing your own color work, and they'll do what are called flats, which again are just kind of flat colors. Sometimes flatters, before the actual color artist comes in, will use wild colors just to create separations, which make it really easy for then the colors to adjust the color palettes because things are so different. I'm not going to really do that in this case. In this case, I'm going to try to capture much of the color palette that's in the original. So I'm going to just, eyedropper in here and then fill in the entire background with this sky color. And then we'll leave that in the background. And then for the flats, I'm going to do some separations as well. So kind of keeping things, again, sort of in separate layers so that I can adjust them more easily later. And I'm going to basically go with the mid-tones in the original illustration and in the original PFP here. So just eyedropping and then going back to my brush. So most of this bird is actually going to be this same kind of middle gray color, and starting with the wing once again, since it's in the foreground, just gonna do this. There are multiple ways to accomplish this, but I'm just gonna kind of fill in the portion of it that is actually all wing. And just create essentially an outline, which I'll then be able to just easily fill in. Keeping in mind where there are gaps with the feathers kind of splaying out here. But yeah, so glad, it's one of those things where sometimes, you get to a certain, at least I, got to a certain skill level. And so sometimes it's, easy to be a little bit lazy about going out and finding that reference, because I could probably pull something off that felt, relatively good, but it's so much better having spent the time to go get that wing reference and understand that anatomy more. So I'm really glad that I did do that. So there's that wing in the foreground. Just to make it easier to tell apart. So this is what I mean. Like, this won't be the finished color art, but I'm going to use this darker gray for the body of the bird. And then I can adjust it, after the fact. But it'll help me keep things more organized as far as being able to tell what's on what layer. So I'm going to use this for the body of the bird. Anyone who doesn't know moonbirds, we call our moonbirds burbs, with B-I-R-B-S, which I think is pretty fun. So I'll do the whole body, and this is under the wing, but it's going to be this whole area under there. So now I can just fill that in. You can see how it helps keep it easily separate as to what's on what layer. And actually that shows me that I want to add just a little bit more here to what's considered wing here. Let's get that part in there too. All right, and then we're going to do, kind of working backwards here, but then we'll do the head. And I'll do the same color for the head, since it's easy enough to tell against the body what has been separated. Go a little bit larger on this. Okay, and I could just, go straight underneath all of this, and sometimes I would just not even worry about, because I'm gonna end up filling in the beak and other things, so wouldn't necessarily have to keep this separate, but or be so respectful, I guess, of the lines. But in this case, I don't know, I am. So just filling in this kind of flat color to begin with. And again, I could just draw straight through the visor as well, since it's all going to be on a separate layer, but just not this time. So kind of outlining my outlines with color. And then I can fill these in pretty quick and easy with something that doesn't have a ton of complexity. I'll do the beak next, and again, going to go for the mid-tone here. Oops, that's not the right thing. Here we go. Okay, now the visor will be next. And we're just going to do, in this case, I guess I'll do the front facing color, and then we'll do light and shadow and that sort of stuff. In this case, I am going to just do the whole visor, and then we'll pull out the red part separately. This is almost the same color as the head, but it's so easy to tell that it's different that I'm not worried about it. Slightly different, I guess, to help it feel a little more metallic when we do the finished rendering and rest of the art here. All right, so that one, I'll just go ahead and fill in the whole thing. Grab the red here, and in this case, I'm doing the reddest red, and then we'll build up some highlights and shadows after the fact. But now, new layer for just the red. Whoops. This. Not the pencil. This is where your coloring book skills will come in very handy. If your coloring book skills happen to be that of coloring inside the lines, which, not everyone thinks that that's what your coloring book skills should be. All right, and then I'm going to put the color for our little scaly companion at the bottom of the layer stack. And again, using the mid-tone in the pixel art. Okay, so it gives us a base to work from. Again, I kind of like the challenge of keeping everything very monochromatic and kind of in this light color world. So I think I am going to go with that. And if after Dave sees it, after you see it, Dave, if you want to do a different background, I'll do that as well. But I think let's go with the day one nesting background, because it does just make this really nice, harmonious, light, feeling color palette, which I think would be fun to lean into here. And a little different than some of the other pieces I've done recently, which have a lot more obvious contrast. So it's a slightly different challenge, but in a very good way. So let's see. One thing I notice is there's a couple places in the wing here where I zoom in, not a big deal, but I'm just obsessed with stuff like that. So getting that little light that was shining through. Okay, so that is stage one, and that is where I'm going to end this part of the live stream. So you're going to get this short version of getting to the flats, and then I'll continue to either stream or at least record the process in the process video here, so we can see the whole thing come together. But I'll at least do one more session, even if it's just kind of getting towards the end or somewhere along the way as we get to the finish. But I feel pretty darn good about this as a step one, and so much so that I think I'll post it so you and others can see some progress. I think it's going to be really cool. But thanks for watching, and lots more to come. If you're seeing this on YouTube, quick reminder, you can follow me at Ebenverse on Twitter. That's the best place to get a hold of me. And of course, everything we're building at Macroverse is at Macroverse HQ. I also appreciate likes and follows and subscribes and all those things. Helps us gain more traction with the stuff that we're building. And yeah, if you have a character that you would like to see interpreted in this way, reach out to me on Twitter and let's talk about it. It's going to be really cool. And with that, everybody have a fabulous rest of your day. And Dave, thanks for commissioning me to make this illustration. It's a lot of fun. Thanks, man.